Lee, you've asked for fans to send their questions in, and owing to various issues, there's been a delay in being able to put this together. But you've always said that you'll be open and transparent. And during the difficult spell we're going through, is it more important than ever that you continue to show that?
I think it's important that you show it whenever. You know, we've always tried to be as transparent as we can, up to that point where it becomes detrimental to the club, where you just can't release every single piece of information that people might like to hear into the public domain. But I've never shied away from any issues. So and that's a tradition. You know, I want to keep going.
Well, let's get started. Firstly, the most recent accounts that were published, they showed losses of 24.7 million for the 21-22 campaign compared to 4.1 for the previous season. How concerning is this? And over the last 3-year rolling period, are we in breach of FFP?
Yeah, well, I'll go backwards. We're not in breach of FFP. Absolutely fine in that respect. The board did make a conscious decision, though, that they would push the envelope. I think they felt players like Chris, like Ilias, very talented, a core group of players. Rather than selling those players over the course of the summer, it was about, all right, let's hold on to them and have a go. We didn't think we fully developed them to the value that we're capable of even last season. So again, the decision was this year. Now, there's been some people, putting some offers in, meddling around with it, but we just don't think that that's the right thing. And so let's try and keep everybody together again, and see how much further we can take it this season. Obviously, it's not going anywhere near to plan, but that was the intent at the beginning of the season.
In the accounts filed via HMRC Company's website, the holdings account seems to have a share valuation in excess of £121 million. How is that possible when we are a limited company that does not physically trade on the stock market?
Well, you've just said it. We're a limited company that doesn't trade on the stock market. Otherwise, the market is what dictates your value. But because we're not traded, it's how that share is actually calculated. I'll be quite honest. It's you'd be better off talking to the finance director on that. If this were a public company, my job would be a completely different thing, because my primary job would be delivering value to the shareholders. Right now, that equity that's in the club that's valued at whatever it is only if someone's willing to pay that, and chances are I don't see anybody coming in right now and paying that kind of money plus the debt that we've accrued. It just wouldn't be an investment probably worth taking. So that really more is the how that's added up is probably more to do with how much money the shareholders have put into the business and converted that into equity, as opposed to keeping it as debt in the business.
A number of clubs appear to have outspent us recently, despite respected online analysts demonstrating far larger ongoing losses without apparent penalty. How are they able to do this?
I have to look at the specific clubs. Some clubs did a stadium sale and leaseback provision, which I'm not at all in favor of. I think you really need to keep the assets of the football club, the tangible assets, within the football club itself. No matter how well-intentioned an owner can be, something can happen. I've gone on record before and said I really don't like the benefactor model. Ultimately, yes, it is their train set in terms of the money that they're willing to put in, but I would much prefer to see a club that just is completely self-sustainable and stands on its own 2 feet. History is littered with clubs who again, Eddie Davis, probably a great example up at Bolton. Very well-intentioned owner. Something happens to him. The family don't want to keep going with the situation there, and then Bolton finds itself in big trouble. Derby County sold the stadium to the owner's company with the greatest will in the world. I'm sure Mel had every good intention, but now a separate group owns the stadium and a separate group owns the club, and that's never a good situation to be in.
Are football clubs considering challenging FFP and profitability and sustainability restrictions, as they seem to stop ambitious owners from taking clubs to the next level? I feel the club should be instead pushing for a wage cap of 70% of a club's turnover, following the example recently by UEFA, who have changed their financial fair play rules.
Well, 2 things on that. One, the clubs are the ones who voted for the P&S rules in the first place. So in order to change them now, you require 50% majority vote of the league, 75% of the championship to change any rules. cannot get 75% of the clubs to agree on what the rules should be changed to. All clubs have different views on it. Right now, some say, nope, 39 million over 3 years is reasonable. That's what it should be. Other clubs saying it should be reduced. Other clubs saying no, it should be keeping pace with parachute payments or at least inflation, and that amount should be changed. It's all over the place. So, in absence of a consensus of 18 clubs, you're not going to get the rules changed. I think it's good that there is some restriction in there, because again, for the exact same reason, where you could have really well-intentioned owners, but if it all went pear-shaped, and someone said, "Oh, I've got to walk away, I can't fund it anymore," and you're stuck with 3 years worth of contracts, then you got a big problem on your hands from a football club standpoint. So I think there are good reasons there. With the white paper that just came out in regards to football reform and financial reform and redistribution of income, that goes hand in hand with some kind of governance and some kind of cost control mechanisms that we're going to have, that we'll have to put in place for payroll. There's just no other way around it. I don't know what they're going to look like yet. That's still to be discussed. But at least the government is saying, yeah, we recognize the need for financial redistribution, but we also recognize the need that people need to get their houses in order, and you can't just keep writing checks for way more than the money that you're bringing in.
What is the latest on QPR completing payment of the FFP fine imposed 4 years ago?
Well, 4 years ago, we've got 6 more years to pay it off. But again, that money has been siloed. The owners pay that off. Doesn't count towards our FFP, P&S, whatever you want to call it, calculation. So that money, will continue to be paid off. But like I said, from an operational standpoint, doesn't affect us at all.
Turning to the club's transfer policy, has there been too much reliance on loans?
The loans are a funny thing. Some like Tim has come and it's worked out really well for him. But the reasons you get a loan is because, one, that player comes in and offers you something that's different than what you have right now, and you feel that's a need you can't get in the open market. Sometimes it's something that buys you time while either you're developing internally or your scouting network can come up with something else. So there are good reasons to have a loan sometimes. But it's always about trying to properly manage them. And I think in this year, we didn't feel we had a right back, and there wasn't anything in the market. We had Moses last year. Again, Moses, there was never a question about his ability, but how long could he really stick with it? That was always the question mark. So the decision was, well, let's bring in a right back on loan. We knew what Ethan Laird had done. His stats were very good. We felt that bought us a bit of time in order to try and assess the market and have another go next season with bringing somebody else in.
The contract length of assets such as Chris Willock is a concern. Why has it come down to 1 year left this summer?
The one thing we can't do is be held to ransom on contracts that are completely unrealistic on the part of another party. Now, in fairness, Chris is still negotiating his contractual deal. We're still talking. But there's been instances in the past where you think, oh, we better give him more because we've got to protect the asset value, and that asset value never materializes. Or the other way is, we had a player who we made very good offers to, and the player himself said they were good offers. He said, well, okay, what does your agent think? He said, well, the agent thinks it's a good offer as well. Like, right. And so the manager, who was Mark Warburton at the time, said, are you happy here? I was like, yeah, I'm really happy here, Gaffer. So you think it's a good offer, your agent thinks it's a good offer, and you're happy here. Why aren't you signing it? Well, my dad doesn't think it's enough. It's like, yeah, but the offer's to you, not your dad. It's like, yeah, I know, but I got to listen to my dad. So, we get into a situation like something along those lines. It's very, very difficult. What do you do? There's not much room there, and so as that player eventually left the club, we salvaged what we could out of it. But it was an unfortunate situation for everybody. But what we can't do is be held to ransom, because if you look at the players that have left, you won't find many that have gone on, and another club has sold them for a ton of money. Raheem Sterling obviously is one, but the club were kind of in a no-win situation with that because of his age, and I think they managed as well as they could. When I first came here, we had Cole Capecqua, and the fans were up in arms when I walked in the door saying, "Why are we selling Cole Capecqua to Barnsley? This is crazy. It's nuts." It's like, well, in hindsight, I'm looking at that thinking, yeah, looks like it was the right decision to sell Cole Kopecky. He's never gone on. Probably the only one where you look back that I can think of is probably Jack Robinson, where Jack went to Nottingham Forest, then sold to Sheffield United. But again, Jack left for not very much more money than what we were offering, and feeling a little bit aggrieved at that one, considering the amount of care we put into Jack and getting him back on track again with his injury history. But it's a brutal world.
And what would you say to people who say, well, why aren't these conversations had when there's 2 years left rather than
they start back then? Yeah, they start early, but sometimes it just takes that long.
And I guess you have to get the balance between if you agree on the contract at that point, and if it's on too much money, the asset is no longer an asset because perhaps the asset's mentality changes.
It could be. Well, that's one of the things, especially with young players, where Chris in particular is quite keen in terms of if you give people too much too soon, they down tools. And in the formative years when they're young, we need to keep them hungry.
Why did we come to an agreement with Macauley Bonne instead of sell him to Charlton?
If there would have been a market for Macauley Bonne, I would have sold him into that market. But right now, it was more important to get the wages off and save on the wages than it was in terms of getting in the fee. Again, anything I can do. My job is to try to create as much headroom as I can on the P&S calculations. Is to be creative with whatever deals that people think need to be done to bring people in or get people out. But just do whatever I can to try and make the finances work. And in that particular instance, assessing the market situation with Maca, it looked like that was the best deal for the club. Obviously, what we weren't counting on is Lyndon becoming ill. There's always a risk that somebody could be injured, but with Lyndon becoming ill, that created a huge issue for us.
How is the relationship with Richard Reilly? Is he bringing in new investors from the US?
Yeah, I'm always fascinated by the questions I get about Rich, because I don't know where they come from. I think people think there's some conspiracy theory or something out there of what's going on, but Rich it's really simple. I got a call from somebody who said, I've got somebody in town, they're looking at investing in English football. As an American, would you mind showing around your club and kind of taking them through how things work in football, which I did with Rich. And then there was a call a couple of weeks later saying, no, he's quite interested in what you had to say. And then he foolishly decided to invest in QPR. Rich had said, he was looking for a minority interest in the club because rather than writing out the check for the whole thing and being responsible for the whole thing. And he was the one who pointed out with a minority interest, it's really about the relationships with the people. So, the next step was obviously meeting the rest of the shareholders. They got on really, really well. And so Rich signed up to be in the QPR family. And to be fair, he's been a very, very good appointment. He asks some very good questions, comes at it from a different angle. And I think it's been a really, really acquisition, good addition to the board.
We would like some clarity on the Taylor Richards loan. We understand this is a hot loan with an obligation to buy. Are there any terms where the obligation is triggered, or are we definitely signing him in the summer?
Yeah, I got to be careful. I'm not quite sure what the deal says between us and Brighton as regards to confidentiality. I don't think they mind if I said it because they were willing to sell the player. It will convert to a permanent loan in the summer. So yeah, I've never turned a hot loan. I'm not familiar with, but yeah, that's the terminology. That's probably right. So yeah, that will be common. With apologies to Brighton if I've breached any confidentiality provisions in the agreement.
Why did the club negotiate a deal with Michael Beale that had a release clause? Is this part of the long-term plan for QPR? And if it is, what is to stop this happening again? And how is this fair to supporters?
Well, most managerial contracts have a release clause in them, and it's generally related to the notice period that you're giving them. So there is a loose correlation between the two. If you didn't have it, you're relying on the open market. And what if, let's take the McBeal. Rangers comes in. All right, he turns down Wolves, fine, everything's fine, we're going forward. But then Rangers come in and says, I really want to go to Rangers. It's like, well, you can't. Okay, we're going to have a manager here now who I can't get the money out because we start losing games. Well, actually we were, but Rangers go, oh, he's checked out. All I got to do is be a little bit patient now. And you need to really think it through. You really do. You can't have a manager here who doesn't want to be here, because next thing you know, you'll be getting towards the end of the season, you'll be paying them off, as opposed to getting money in for them. Which, by the way, funny enough, just a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to somebody from a club. That's exactly the situation they had, where they had an approach, said no, wouldn't agree, and by the end of the season, they were paying off the manager. So, again, it's cleaner that way for everybody. Everybody knows where they stand, and it's probably the fairest way and the cleanest way to make it happen. Because otherwise, you get a legitimate argument. Then, if the guy comes to you and says, I want to go to Rangers, they go, this is what they have to pay. Well, they don't want to pay that. It's like, come on, you signed the contract. This is what they have to pay. You want to go there? You work over, and you help me get this money. Then,
a 2-point question. First, can you detail the current strategy and long-term objective, and whether it has changed at all in the last 5 years? Following on from point 1, do you feel that you and Les Ferdinand are the people best placed to deliver it?
Look, well, I'll deal with the second point first. Do I think I'm the best person? No, I don't. I absolutely positively guarantee you there are better people out there than me. I'm not Muhammad Ali. I don't think I'm the greatest. But I do. I work hard. I try to be logical about things, and I'm honest about things. Sometimes that's not always the case in the world of football. But if there was somebody out there better than me, great. I'd love to see them take the club forward. I would have no issues with that. In regards to the long-term plan hasn't changed. Sometimes you can have little derivations in the short term, like when you say, make a conscious decision not to sell the players, when that normally is your game plan, but say, no, we're going to keep them together. We're going to try to have a go this year. So that in that respect, the long-term plan doesn't change. It's still about trying to develop players and building a talented squad based on development and youth.
Okay, would the directors ever consider a democratically elected supporter representative on the board as a permanent link between club and fans, perhaps under FSA guidance? Well,
that would be a question for the board. First of all, I'm not a member of the board. My advice to both them and the fans would be, don't do it that way. The Supporters Consultation Committee is something you could probably formalize a bit better to act as a shadow board or something like that. That might be something you could have a democratically elected representative there. But I tell you now what would happen. If you had someone directly on the board, one of two things would happen. You get a situation like we're in now where you're getting hammered. Sometimes you just can't release all the information. You can't go out there, as tempting as it might be. You might want to throw somebody under the bus because you're getting hammered by your fellow supporters. So you start throwing people under the bus or leaking things you shouldn't leak instead of taking some body blows for the team. That doesn't work. Or the other part would be, I didn't sign up for this. Flipping heck, I'm out of here. All I'm doing is getting grief from all my mates. All I want to do is watch a game. So I wouldn't recommend it to either party. In terms of the sounding board and the voice being heard, then yeah, great, we've got that, and I think we can hear the voices, and we get the feedback. We do things like the Supporters Consultation Committee, the fans forums, these types of things where I invite you to do questions, podcasts. It's not as if I've ever shut anybody out and refused to listen to anything. I've never gone into an interview saying, okay, I'll do the interview, but you got 10 minutes and I'm not going to answer questions about this, and this. It's like, no, yes, whatever you want. I'll give you an honest answer. And if I can't tell you it, I'll say, I just can't tell you it, and I'll explain why. But that hardly ever really happens. So, so in that respect, I think that's probably the better way to do it if you want your voice to be heard. Unless someone has a particular area of expertise and they're saying, I can bring this to the board because I'm an expert in this particular area. And that's never a bad thing.
I think most fans understand there is a lot of misinformation and confusion on what each person's role is at QPR and what the key targets are within the club. Can Lee give us clear quantitative targets, whether that be for gross P&L per year, number of supporters in stadium, net spend on player transfers, etc., for say the beginning of 24-25 season, that we can hold Lee accountable for?
Yeah, sure. I've got no problem with doing that. We can share KPIs. I mean, obviously, I've set my own goals in terms, the things I wanted to in terms of, cost cutting, revenue enhancements, trying to increase the yield on the ticket. trying to increase young people coming into the stadium. We had a discussion the other day where the podcast said, you're the man with the numbers, but you need to appeal to more younger people. Like, well, I know that the average age has come down from 49 to 43.6, in the last 10 years. So we are working on it. We have actually brought the average age demographic down. So from the future standpoint, that looks good. So, those are the keys. For me, it's about the future. It's about addressing things like, when I first came about, what's the senior citizen age, which obviously we've addressed, and it's going, tends to go up every couple of years. How do you get that balance in terms of the revenue part of it versus, being fair to supporters who might, just be coming up to retirement age, or sorry, I should say the concession age that you would get, and just trying to reach that balance. But I've got I certainly get held accountable by the board, that's probably the ultimate accountability, the board, and if the fans want to share in those KPIs, no problem at all.
Are we getting value from our academy? Wouldn't we be better off just focusing on players released from Premier League clubs? Our track record isn't very good.
Actually, two things. Weirdly, I've just gotten today the academy output, and it shows our efficiency. We're actually the 5th best academy in Category 2 in terms of output. So clearly, that's good to see. The other part of it is just doing released players. You wouldn't have an academy. You'd probably have a B team, and the incremental cost, because you get a grant from the Premier League and from the EFL for running an academy based on your category, and it's just not that much more money running under 16s and below when you consider the grant. It just makes it worth doing because the incremental amount over and above what you're getting a grant for doing that, it just makes sense.
I wanted to write to you about the club potentially leaving the current EPPP system and instead having a B team. For me, I feel the current EPPP model simply doesn't work for the club, and its costs doesn't justify us remaining in it. I strongly believe the current system restricts us in terms of recruitment and in terms of development and producing young players.
I wouldn't disagree with you. I'm not a huge fan of EPPP in terms of the shackles that it puts on people. Something like the Raheem Sterling deal now, man, we would be absolutely stuffed in something like that. But it's not as if there's an option of going in and going out. It's part of the contractual obligation that the Premier League now have with the Football League. So the solidarity payment, incorporates that. There'll be a payment for solidarity from the Premier League, which all Championship clubs will get, and in addition to the stuff that you get funded for in terms of running your academy. So unfortunately, it's not as if you can just say, I'm not going to be in EPPP, because ultimately it's a rule and it applies to all your transfers, just like it would, FIFA. If someone, a player decided to leave at a certain age, bang, that's just, there's no negotiation there. If he's out of contract, it's the compensation is set based on how long he's been with you. The good news is they did review the compensation scheme over the summer, so we do get a bit more now if someone does leave and we're just strictly going by compensation.
What would be the initial expenditure and increased running costs of stepping up the academy to Cat 1? Would that prevent other Cat 1 clubs from stealing our players under the EPPP, or just increase the level of compensation that you just referred to? I don't think it's worth going to Cat 1 right now myself. I've looked at it. I just don't see that it offers significant value in doing it. I think Category 2, because I don't think people leave because that's a Cat 1 club. I think they'll leave for another badge. They'll leave, back to the dad again, primarily because, you say, well, my son plays for Tottenham, my son plays for Arsenal. I don't think he goes into work and says, oh, he plays for a Cat 1 club now. It's about, the allure of going to a big club. I think that's what the draw is, as opposed to whether it's Category 1 or whether it's Category 2. I also think that, I know that they're actually trying to get much more strict with the Category 1 clubs in terms of the audit procedures, and really trying to weed them out, because they never anticipated there'd be this many Category 1s that are operating right now. So that would be something that I think I easily see clubs slipping out of Category 1 and getting down to Category 2. With the cost of living being a big talking point and something that feels like it is going to be around for a long time, what is the club doing to help support the fans and make sure that these same fans are able to come and support the club they love, as well as attract new fans?
It's always a balance with that, because you're right. The cost of living, it affects you, but it affects us too. Our costs are going up all the time. We've had massive increases, and it's like driving into the petrol forecourt when Saudi Arabia is saying I'm cutting production, the cost of oil goes up. You don't go in and say to the guy that owns the forecourt, it's like, oh, what, you didn't ask me about raising these prices, because he's just got no choice. In order for him to stay in business, he has to raise the prices. He has to increase revenue, because the cost of all his supplies coming in has gone up. It's the same as us. Everything's going up. The only thing we've been really good about would be our energy supply, which I know a lot of people have had. It's tripled in terms of what they've been doing. We signed into a long-term agreement in 2019, so we're good till next year. But after next season, after this season, I should say, 2024, is those prices are going to boom. But literally everything else has gone up significantly in terms of in terms of cost. So in order for us to keep pace, we have to raise our prices as well. Having said that, it's about, look, we want to encourage fans to be loyal. We want to encourage fans to have commitment. So things like, obviously, season tickets are always going to give you the best value on a per match basis. But we've tried to come up with other things in addition, realizing that not everybody can afford a season ticket. So, we've done things like, the 8-pack, the midweek fixture games that we do this year. We've tried to do it based on monthly payments to try and, even the expense out, so it's not big lump sum payments. So it's just trying to work with people to make it as affordable as we possibly can, without us just absolutely, having so much reliance on external funding. And even then, you can rely on external funding, but the reality is, can't lose more than $39 million over a 3-year period. So, you have to increase the revenue, as it all comes down to.
The slogan 20 years plenty is often bandied around when fans are discussing ticket prices. I know the ticket prices include VAT and a levy to the Football League. Could Lee please tell us what other costs there are and what the expected ticket yield would be from a £20 ticket as opposed to a £36 ticket?
Well, I'd take 20 quid from everybody all day long if it was net. Because we don't come anywhere near that. We're right around just over 15 quid a ticket in terms of the yield, because it's yes, the VAT, the league levy, but also there's senior citizens, there's kids, there's the under 21 prices. So it's not as if everybody's paying the same price. It also depends on the demand in a particular area of the stadium. Like I said, one of the things from a KPI standpoint was, how do you maximize the revenue? And that's one of the ways we've looked at doing it. You can get a cheaper ticket down in Y block, and that's so that's an entry level point. So yes, you can sell that. Or if you want something right smack in the middle with the best view in seat in the house, then obviously that does cost you more. But like I said, if I could get 15, if I could get 20 net from everybody, we'd actually be doing quite well. But it just unfortunately doesn't work that way.
A season or so back, a replica shirt costs between £35 and £40. Please can it be explained as to why this season shirt prices have increased by £10 plus when there have been no drastic changes in the kit provider, materials, etc.?
Well, actually, there have been drastic changes. As you said before, the cost of living, has affected everybody. So material has gone up. Cost of transport has gone up. Everything has gone up. In fairness to Araya, they've been the best kit supplier I've had in 20-odd years of football. They notified us, the year before last, we got some real supply chain problems coming down in the next year that are going to really affect deliveries. They worked with us on deliveries. They said, look, this is what's happening. Our costs have gone up in terms of the manufacturing, in terms of material. The costs have gone up in terms of shipping. Shipping's been a huge increase in cost. So, yeah, prices have gone up. We held the line for quite a while, but at some point, reality sets in, inflation sets in, costs set in, and that's just what's happened. So, yeah, there has been a significant increase in the costs of materials and transport.
As someone who's autistic, can you say whether the club regard autism as a disability? It is under law. And if so, what exactly you do to support autistic fans at games? Quieter areas are quieter, but we all know you won't allow us in there in disabled areas.
Well, we do have a quiet area. I suggest, I don't know why you think we won't allow you in there. So my suggestion would be, if you want to contact the club beforehand because you're unsure of what you can do, that's fine. Contact the club beforehand. We'll explain what the procedure is for accessing the quiet area, and that's probably the easiest way to go.
Hi Lee, has the club ever thought about tapping into the local colleges around the ground for matchday staff? Sheffield United had adverts on student accommodation near the ground for people to work at the ground on match days. Couldn't we consider this option?
Yeah, we do try and recruit our own stewards. And I have done it at other clubs where maybe a little bit too much reliance on colleges and universities, because the problem then is when they go for break, everybody disappears, and then you're scrambling around trying to find stewards. So it's something that we're always open to, something that we do try and bring in. But what I wouldn't want to do is have an over reliance on them and put myself in a position where I'm really struggling and can't fill the requisite number of stewards that we need in order to open the ground.
Can the values of QPR be published, communicated, as it appears to be a culture of negativity, apathy, and it's all too difficult to do across the club? Common things I hear are: A, cannot do anything because of FFP. This includes repairing a leaky roof in the upper loft and fixing a sound system. Are you still waiting for quotes? This happened in early December. It should be fixed by now. I'm sure if it was above the director's box, it would have been done the next day. B, we as in QPR don't do that because no other club does it. Or C, it's difficult.
Well, difficulty has never been something, we've always tried to do it anyway, so I don't know where you're coming up with that. We don't do it because no other clubs do it. We do quite a bit that other clubs don't do. So I have no idea where that's coming from either. And then what was the first one, like the leaky roof? I know we've tried to repair the leaky roof several times. Not always so easy unless you just do the entire thing, because water finds its own level. But there have been multiple attempts to do that. In terms of the sound system, again, this is what happens when you start saying it can't be that expensive. Well, it is, because the wiring and everything, because it has to be a hardwired system because of safety concerns and the Green Guide, which will guide you in terms of safety for the stadiums. Everything has to be hardwired. It's a massive investment. It's hundreds of thousands. The speakers have been replaced many times. We keep replacing speakers gradually because every year I take a little bit of the budget and I use it for capital expenditures around the ground. But at the end of the day, the wiring hasn't been replaced. The wiring is old, and that is a huge expenditure to try and do it. If I had Premier League money or something like that, then great, we'd be doing it. Always happy to have input on things, but at the end of the day, we have to prioritize the budgets that we have. And as far as hearing it's FFP, it's like, yeah, it is FFP. What do you want me to do? You can sit there and tell me, oh, I'm tired of hearing about FFP. It's like, okay, then why do you keep asking the same questions? Because it is FFP. It all comes down to FFP. Sorry, guys. It is what it is. There's nothing I can do about it. Those are the rules. That's what we do. I try to advise the board on this is the way it is. Ultimately, their decisions in terms of how we take things forward. But it's like, we have to be really careful about what we're doing, especially if you make a conscious decision not to sell players and try to keep things together. So, sorry, guys, you can't have it all. As much as I'd like to give you all, it's just not possible.
Okay, are there any thoughts on how the Manchester City investigation potentially impacts the general landscape?
I have no idea how that's going to go. I'm very interested to see how it goes. Obviously, we have very much a vested interest in how that case proceeds. In some ways, when I walked in, I thought, if anything, the shareholders here were probably too honest and too cooperative for their own good. Whereas Man City delayed it, kicked into the tall grass, delayed, were very uncooperative. Our shareholders said, well, this is what we did, and this is why we did it. We were stuck with these contracts. There's nothing we could do about it because you didn't grandfather anything in, and we didn't have enough lead time in order to correct it. So we are where we are. But absolutely, it'll be fascinating to see where the Man City decision leads us.
Okay, can we have a new stadium update? Shouldn't we put more energy to moving outside the borough rather than waiting on the Linford Christie site, which seems to be making no progress, although, of course, since there has been an update regarding the Linford Christie site, it seems to be going in a different direction to QPR.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with Linford Christie. We're in consultation with the council on that. We also do want to absolutely make sure that we've covered every base here. Could we do something? Because I always said with the existing footprint, it's really difficult. You can't really do anything with a stadium. You're stuck unless you lower the capacity. But if we had a slightly larger footprint, and I'm not suggesting we're buying the houses down behind the Stanley Bowles stand or anything like that. But is there any ways we can expand the footprint a bit to try and see what we could do to make things work here? So I think that's something that we'll engage with the council with. and just absolutely exhaust every possibility there is here first before we decide to move on to something else.
Instead of giving away clubs both tiers, why don't we make the lower school end safe standing for home fans and make it cheap, like Y Block is in the Stanley Bowl stand? It could be a magnet for younger fans with cheap tickets.
Well, I think one of the things that the SGSA, the Sports Ground Safety Authorities, is standing was not going to be in the lower below the away stands. So that was something that was a no-go. I think the police would have major issues with that as well. So not possible to really do that right now, and in fact, probably for the exact reasons that you think would be a good idea. The police and the safety authorities think it's a bad idea, attracting our younger fans who are going to be maybe a little bit more mercurial than the people who are there right now. So that would be something I think that would be very, very difficult from an operational standpoint to get over the line. Having said that, I always prefer to sell to home fans as opposed to away fans, and we were selling that area out pretty regularly up until the Burnley game. The Burnley had actually asked for both tiers, and we said no because we had been selling out the bottom tier. But in that particular game, we didn't even cover the cost of stewarding because we just didn't have enough home fans show up for it. So obviously I've got to do what I do to try to maximize the revenue so that we can pay the wages, we can make inroads into FFP. Yeah, there he goes again. I know, so you just make a game by game decision on whether you think you can sell it out or not.
I'm 6'2". Can you sit in a normal seat with that leg room? I can't, and I'm no longer able to attend.
No, and I fully sympathise with you. Unless you want to you go into the rail area where you can stand, but that's not for everybody as well, because some people say those days are over. But that's the number one reason I want to do a new state. Well, actually, it's not. It's on par. It's joint number one. One would be the non-match day use, because I want more utilization out of the stadium so we can generate as much revenue as possible out of it. And two would be increase the amenities, because it's the reason most people say saying, I can't deal with your lack of leg room when I come to your stadium. That's coming from new fans who I think we could retain them if we had more leg room and more facilities. But based on the configuration we have here right now, I haven't seen anything anywhere that anybody's come up with an idea on how to alleviate that problem.
Are you able to share any information about how much revenue QPR Plus brings in? Do we get any income from away teams streaming our home matches?
Well, the away team streaming our matches, no, because we get our money when we stream a match. When we go away to our fans, that's our cash. So that doesn't happen. I personally think the media team should be doing a much better job and getting more income out of it. But we should net. Well, we won't net. We'll gross about £600,000 this year, unless you're going to tell me you're going to get me 750.
I'm going to move on to the next question.
Okay.
Can the club not appease season ticket holders when home games are changed to either an evening or Sunday kickoff in response to a Sky request?
Again, you're going back into the profitability and sustainability rules, where I'm trying to get every amount I can that goes towards those. So if you start giving money back for because the game's been moved, it just eats into your available profitability and sustainability headroom. We do try and price the season tickets so that you're absolutely getting the best deal in the ground. That you're getting a price. In some cases it's below 20 quid a match. So it's just trying to maintain that balance, trying to keep going, trying to make sure we got the money to work with, trying to make sure that's we're eating into it and we've got the headroom that we need under PNS, whilst at the same time trying to be fair to the fans.
And a follow-up to that one regarding Sky, how much do we receive as a home club and an away club for Sky Picks?
We get the same for both, so it's 75,000 for each appearance. Obviously away, that works really well for us. At home, probably covers the cost of the reduction in capacity or attendance that you have for the people that don't show up. But on top of that, you also get there's a £3 million central payment that's also made to every single club that forms part of the Sky deal as well. So that's it's in addition to the actual appearance fee that you get for an individual match.
And just finally, obviously it's been a challenging season. How have you personally found this season?
How have I found the season? incredibly frustrating. You look at where we were in October compared to where we are now, and you think, how does that happen? And listen, if I had the answer to that question, you wouldn't be interviewing me right now, because I'd probably be in my office in Miami, because I could be advising Bayern Munich on the same exact thing, and Leicester City. How does it happen with the same manager that you go off a cliff? Crystal Palace, where you can be, Vieira's the greatest thing since sliced bread for the first half of the year, and then drops off a cliff there. It's just, you want to scream sometimes, yeah. So it's tough. So I understand how frustrated supporters must be. Sometimes I think I'd rather be out there screaming than I would be right here just trying to eat the frustration and making sure you don't take it out on your family, because let's face it, football is like a drug, isn't it? I mean, we're all addicts, aren't we? Fans are the same as anybody that works in the club as well. You go home and you think, oh, I'm not doing. That's it. I've had it. I've had enough. You get to the end of the season. I've had it with the fans. I've had it with the board. I've had it with everybody. I just can't wait. And then by the time July comes around, I'm thinking, oh, geez, I just need another fix. Once it's Saturday at 3 o'clock, I need my fix of football. So it is a strange old business. And yeah. With I guess like any addict, the people who really pay the price for our habit are the families. Really difficult. It's just, I think now a matter of trying. It's like, right, what can we do? What can we do differently now to try and get things back on track and get this thing over the line so we can set up for next season? So appreciate the fans. The fans, to be fair, the last couple of games really frustrated. You can feel it, but he stuck with the team every step of the way. And even Critchley's one of his last games, made sure he reminded the players that saying these guys are really sticking by you. They're behind you every step of the way. So can't argue with what the fans have done. I think they've been great. It's let's get it over the line.